Well, hello again, gang. I am recording another video, this time about your hiring matrix. I won't spend any time on the grading because the grading is exactly the same as it was for the questions. So if you figured out the questions part of it, just apply the same ideas to the matrix and you'll have how I'm going to grade that thing. It's the same pieces, the completeness, the applicability, the cleanness, whatever. So just make sure that you focus on the right things. What I really wanted to do in this video is to talk about the concept of the matrix and how you go about creating one. Now, in the past, in other semesters when I've taught this class, I've actually put a couple of examples out as links in our class content. And I've decided not to do that this time because while I want you to have something that you can work with as a template, the real nasty tendency, the downside of doing that is that students get too dependent on that template and they don't really think about whether it works for them, and they don't make a lot of alterations to it. So they haven't really done anything except minor modifications to somebody else's work. And I'm hoping that through the course of this video I can describe it well enough to where you can create it without a whole lot of problems. You can at least kind of design on a piece of paper, taking a piece of copy paper or taking a piece of notebook paper or something, and then just kind of free sketching it out what you want to have to go where. That maybe I could give you some sort of a template later that you could just fill in so that you don't have to build all the formatting and stuff. But with that said, I really want you to focus for now on what's on that matrix more so than what that matrix actually looks like. The purpose of the matrix is to give you a tangible piece of evidence that you can use to justify a decision that you made in hiring. And I say in this video and in my on-campus classes that it's a great exercise to get you to understand the way that you go about doing it. But it may be something that you never do in real life. It's kind of easy for me to understand how a lot of folks who do interviewing on a regular basis don't go through the process of creating these matrices or creating a matrix for an interview, because they're so good at what they're doing. They're catching things mentally that they don't need to make notes for on paper. But if you've not done a lot of interviews in the past, when it comes time to make the decision after you've interviewed 4 or 5 candidates, it may be hard to remember specifics about individuals, and that certainly impacts your ability to make a good decision for hiring purposes. So the purpose of this matrix is to put on a piece of paper what you're looking for and to give you an outlet to measure the things that are important. So I envision that you either create a Word document or an Excel document that you can print out and have on your desk next to your questions so that you can make notes and that you can evaluate in real time as you go and not have to rely on your memory later to distinguish the 4th question out of 20. How did candidate number 2 answer that? I don't remember the details. Great, now I'm going to have a hard time deciding. If you have something like this, a tool like this handy, you can make notes as you go, and then you can go back and say, oh yeah, right, I remember what this person said on question 2 because I've got some notes right here. In order to do the matrix, first thing you've got to do is decide what's important. Similar to if you're looking for a spouse, you've got some characteristics in mind that you're looking for. You don't just go out and blindly test the waters and see which one looks the best. You've got a checklist in your mind. They have to have this quality and that quality. This is important, that's important. I want to avoid this, I want to avoid that. But you've got a checklist. Same thing if you go buy a car. You don't just probably drive to a car lot at random and say, let me drive 4 cars and I'll pick one. No, you've got an idea of what you want. You kind of have an idea of what you're looking for in terms of gas mileage and safety ratings and fuel efficiency, which is gas mileage, I guess. Hybrid or electric or those kinds of things, sunroof, what kind of stereo system, 5-speed or automatic, general brand, make and model, that kind of thing. You've got an idea going in of what you're looking for, and you've probably, as you've made this list of things, and I can tell you as I've bought used cars before in the old days when you actually looked in the newspaper, I had a pretty good idea of the kind of car I wanted, but I had lots of specific questions, and I'd go through and read the ads, and I'd put check marks and X's and things like that. And as I called people and asked them questions, interviewed them in a sense about their car, I made notes, and there were certain things about a car that I absolutely had to have, and if your car didn't have it, I was not going to talk to you any further. Same thing with a job. Looking at your job description, there are certain things that are critical, and you've got to be able to measure them, and there are other things that are nice that you'd like to be able to evaluate somehow, but all of that fits together, you could say mathematically, to create the ideal candidate. So for your matrix, think about what's important. Certainly their answers to questions are important, but there are other things that are important as well. You decide what is important to you, and your criteria for hiring may be vastly different than mine or the person who is next in line alphabetically in our class from you. But you might consider, I don't want to guide you toward particular answers, but just to get the brainstorming, creative juice thinking process going, let me give you some suggestions. What about their resume is important? Does the way that it look, is that important to you? Is the cleanliness, is free of errors, is the aesthetics, is the use of white space, is the phrasing on their cover letter important? What about that resume could help distinguish one candidate as compared to others? So you may have, as part of your matrix, a section that deals with the resume and the cover letter and the things that you're looking for, that you either answer yes or no, or you scale from 1 to 5, let's say. If I'm looking for this quality and I'm going to measure that, is it a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1, based upon the standard that I put to each of those numbers. The more you do those kinds of Likert scales, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rating, strongly disagree, strongly agree, whatever, the more you have data points that can distinguish characteristics or candidates. So if you've got 4 interviews that you're doing, 3 of them got a 5 on this and 1 got a 4. Well, there's a slight distinction between some of the candidates. So resume is one possible thing. You may have intangible things about your interview. Were they there on time? Did they smile a lot? Were they professionally dressed? Did the guys have on a tie? Did the ladies have on pearls? I don't know what's important to you. But little things like that you're looking for. Did they seem to be pretty confident in what they're doing? Did they make good eye contact? Did they smile a lot? Did they call you by name? Did they introduce themselves? Did they say thank you? Politeness. Again, that may have nothing to do whatsoever with your job, and you certainly don't want to be evaluating things that don't predict success or predict fit with your company or with your department. But you do want to be looking for things that make a difference. So the things beforehand, the resume, the cover letter, the interaction, the communication, the professionalism on their email interactions, so forth. The things during the interview, their eye contact, professionalism, appearance, dress, those kind of confidence, that kind of thing. Maybe even after the fact, they get bonus points if they sent you a thank you email, but that may not disqualify them if they didn't. But it's a plus for somebody who did. I don't know. You decide whether that kind of thing is important. But a bulk of your matrix is going to be related to your questions. And I might suggest to you that you have a line item for every single question that you asked. Maybe you find a way to design your matrix to where you actually have the question there on the page. You wouldn't even have to have a page with your questions on it if the question appears in its entirety on the matrix itself. So as you scan down your matrix, you're checking off things as you're getting into the interview. The first question is right there. You can read it off of your matrix. And then you ask that question and you listen to them and you evaluate that answer. Maybe there is one thing that you're evaluating. How complete was it? Or maybe there's 2 things you evaluate. How complete was it? How enthusiastic was it? I don't know. But you score it from 1 to 5. And you go through all 10 of your questions, all 25 of your questions, and you score each one of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you look for things in your interview, and as they interact with you, to justify, maybe not everybody automatically gets a 5. Maybe everybody automatically gets a 4, but they bump to a 5 if they add this piece. Or they start with a basis of 3 and they lose a point if you're missing this, or they add a point if you add that. But again, with this matrix, if you know what you're looking for and you have a pretty good feel for how to value it or evaluate it as you're listening to them real time, having 30 or 40 things that you look for on this matrix gives you, let's say that there's 30 different things that you're evaluating on a 1 to 5 scale. The high value is 150 if they're perfect on everything. you probably will have a lot of people in the 130 range, but the difference between a 130 and a 131 is measurable. And you could justify offering a job to this person because they got a 131 instead of a 130. But let me caution you that it's not always quite that simple black and white mathematics. That gives you a pretty good idea, at least, of which two are better than the other two or the other three, but it may not distinguish number one from number two. And it may be that mathematically this person is better. So maybe you want to include on your matrix a gut feeling kind of thing, and it's a 0, 3, 5, 7, 10, I don't know. But after doing this interview, just like when you're buying a car, mathematically this one checks off all the boxes and scores a lot of points. But I didn't have a good gut feeling about that salesperson, or I just wasn't absolutely sure. I can't put it into words, but I just didn't feel right about that. So mathematically, I'm not going to go with the highest answer. I'm going to go with my gut feeling on this, or I'm going to look at this 135 and bump it up to a 140, surpassing that other 137 because of my gut feeling. So maybe there is an intangible factor that you put at the bottom of all this thing that only really bumps in when two people are real close and you feel better about one than about the other. You certainly wouldn't want to go with a poorly performing candidate because you had a good feeling about it. If they do poorly on the questions, but you connected with them, that may not be the reason that you hire them. So all of that to say that the matrix, I think, is an important process to go through to really clarify to identify what you're looking for and to create a way that you can distinguish subtle differences between your candidates. Ideally and theoretically, you've got this well-developed matrix. You go through this interview, you're scoring and making notes as you go, and when you have finished all 4 or all 5 of these interviews, you can put these 4 or 5 pieces of paper side by side on the table. You can add up all of the points and you can circle a grand total, and then you can rank them from high to low. And the high one should be, in most circumstances, the person that you'd make an offer to. But 2 of them that are very close, you could factor in that intangible. But again, ideally, you've got a very mathematical, black and white, unbiased definition of who did better, who did the best, who's the best fit, who's the best experienced, whatever. And if it came down to, all right, Susie, you've decided to make an offer to this person, prove to me that you haven't introduced any discrimination or any bias into this. Okay, I can prove to you that I haven't, because here's mathematically on paper. You can look for yourself at the responses to their questions and the things that we think are important. And then that person who's questioning you about your decision to hire says, all right, you've laid out your case here. It makes an awful lot of sense, and we'll go with what you recommend. So you're designing this matrix. And again, it may be at this point just making a list of the things that you want to measure, getting an idea of how you want to measure them, 1 to 5, yes or no, whatever. And at that point, when you've got a sketch of what this thing looks like, then I can perhaps help you with a template that you fill in the details, you rearrange it a little bit, but it saves you the problem of having to create the design of the thing. Or you may be real good at Excel or Word and tables and things like that, and you want to create your own design because you're comfortable with it and you're able to use it a little bit more easily because you designed it. I don't know. What I want to get from you in the Dropbox is the Excel file or the Word document file that has your finished matrix on it. I won't give it back to you, but I may email you as I review it and score it and say, maybe you think about this, or perhaps you want to leave out that, or you want to rethink or to better clarify how you're going to do this. Whether you take my suggestions for both, well, especially for the matrix, is up to you. You got to be comfortable with what you've designed, and what I suggest may not make you more comfortable. Going back to that questions thing, which you've pretty much already done, I'm wasting my time talking about in this video, but if I make suggestions on questions, you might want to give serious thought to implementing those changes. Even as you're watching this, you haven't done your first interview yet, so you still have time to go back and change your questions. But I don't need a second version of your questions and your matrix like I did for your job description. The job description is a publishable document that has to be perfect. The questions in the matrix are tools that you're going to use. So if you're comfortable with them, that's good. I might suggest changes. You might take those suggestions or not take those suggestions. As long as you feel good going into your interview with both your questions and your matrix, you're fine. So if I make suggestions, use them, don't use them. I don't need a second version. You're going to use what you're going to use. If you have questions, just like anything else with these video updates, send me an email or put something out on the Ask Dr. Grimes discussion board. Give me a call, whatever. Let's get it absolutely clear in your mind what we're trying to accomplish here before you put too much time into it, so that you don't go in the wrong direction and have to backtrack and redo it. I'm looking forward to getting some feedback on the process and the interviews, and looking at what you give me in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses that make them better at what they're about to do for real life, and to make you better in your managerial or your human resource capacities, interviewing people, which is a big part of what we do every day. Let me know. I hope things are going well. Bye for now.